Hey everyone, welcome back to Love Wins, where the truth matters because it's the truth that sets us free. And indeed, it is the truth that sets us free, and that's why Matthew was told to write down the truth. Don't whitewash it, don't polish it, don't skip over anything. In fact, I want you to highlight the worst of it. And so we have Judah and Tamar's super sketchy story. We have Ruth, descended from incest. We have Rahab the prostitute, not an Israelite. Neither was Tamar. Neither was Ruth. Then we have Bathsheba and that whole story of potential rape and murder. Today, we're going to go deeper into the scandal. And the next scandal we're going to get into is easier to miss and more sobering in its implications. So you will not want to skip this one. You will not want to check out, misjudge, assume. Stick around to the end. As we continue through the genealogy of Jesus, we get to 10 and 11, verse 10 and 11. Verse 10 highlights Manasseh, which I would not want to admit that Manasseh was my relative. But at the same time, Manasseh's story ends incredibly well, which Jesus does not want us to forget. Then verse 11 highlights that Israel went to Babylon. Now, if you're an Israelite, you don't want that to be remembered. You don't want that to be highlighted. In 2008, I went to Germany on a Martin Luther tour, and part of that tour, we went to a parking lot. And we're like, why are we here? And our tour guide said that this parking lot is where Hitler's final bunker was located, where he died, or it's believed that he died. You may have different beliefs about that, but anyway, that's the location of the bunker. And Germans, understandably, don't want to remember that part of their history. They don't want to highlight it. They don't want it to be a feature. So they built a parking lot over it. There's no sign there to say that's where it was. Nothing. It's like it never happened. So unless you're in the know, you wouldn't know that that's where it was. And we often do that. We whitewash that which we don't want to remember. Jesus says, I'm coming, and I want you to highlight where I came from, who my family line is behind me. Part of that highlighting was, I want you to write down the time and the people who were around when we went to Babylon, when they went to Babylon. You would expect that verse 12 or verse 13 would highlight coming back out of Babylon, but it does not. I'm going to propose to you today why I believe that is. If you go to Revelation 18, there's a call from God. Babylon is fallen, is fallen. Come out of her, my people. Now, if you put that verse together at the end of the Bible with the genealogy of Jesus, where it says we went into Babylon, but there's no mention of coming out of Babylon, I propose to you that in a very real sense, we never did come out of Babylon. Now, it's true that Israel physically went to Babylon and physically went back to Jerusalem and rebuilt and whatever. But just because you physically move around doesn't mean you change. And I believe Jesus is highlighting that his people went into Babylon, but they didn't come out of Babylon. And you might say, well, you're just making that up. That's just your opinion. But if you go to John chapter 8, there's an intense exchange between Jesus and some Jews. And if you read that chapter carefully, it's not any Jews. It's Jews who believed in him. So these aren't Jews that are railing against him or trying to trip him up or trick him or get rid of him. At this point in time, these Jews believe in Jesus. And so he has a conversation with them. And part of that conversation is the tagline for this channel: you will know the truth, and the truth will set you free, and you'll be free indeed. And when he said that, they were offended. And they said something completely inaccurate, but very telling. They said, we've never been in bondage to anyone. What are you talking about, setting us free? Never been in bondage to anyone? Their history begins in bondage with Moses. Then they're taken captive by Babylon, while they're having the conversation in John chapter 8 with Jesus, they're under Roman rule. They're not free. But in their mind, they have this delusionary idea that they are free, they've always been free. And Jesus is like, no. And actually, the freedom I'm talking about has nothing to do with Babylon or Egypt or Rome. You need to be free on the inside. You will know the truth, capital T, and you'll be free. Free indeed. Which is why I'm doing this series. There are many of us who grew up in and around religion who think we know the truth, but we all disagree, which means many of us, if not all of us, are wrong. Which means all of us need to go back to the drawing board and ask ourselves the question, who is Jesus? Who was Jesus? What was he really like? And are my beliefs about him in line with who he really was? Because in John chapter 8, it starts out with Jews who believed in Jesus. But then when Jesus got real with them, they backed off. And as that conversation unfolded, they claimed to be the children of Abraham. And Jesus agreed with them to a point. He said, you are the descendants of Abraham, but you're not his children. Because if you were his children, you'd be like him. But you are like your father. And they said, oh, we only have one father, God. He said, no. If God was your father, you'd believe in me. You'd listen to me. You're of your father, the devil. So Israel physically came out of Babylon. But Jesus is saying they're still there because the king of Babylon is Satan. And he said Satan's their father. Now, let me highlight one simple point for you that people can argue whatever they want, but no honest person can deny or argue this one. If you go to Acts chapter 10, you find that there's an encounter being prepared between Peter, a Jew, and Cornelius, a Roman centurion. That God is talking to Cornelius, in a relationship with Cornelius. He's in a relationship with Peter, but both of these men are incomplete. Both of these men have much to learn, and he plans to bring them together to help each other. Peter has information about Jesus that Cornelius needs. Cornelius is a Roman centurion, and God's going to use him to teach Peter that the kingdom of God is bigger than Jews. First, he gives Peter a vision. Sheet comes down from heaven, full of unclean animals. It's, rise, kill and eat. Peter says, no, I don't eat that stuff. I'm a good Jew. 3 times this happens, and Peter's like, what is this about? But then the people come. Cornelius sends some people to look for him, to find him, to bring him back to Cornelius. And Peter begins to piece it together. When he gets to Cornelius' house, he says to Cornelius, you know that it's unlawful for a Jew to associate with a foreigner. Peter doesn't just say that it's inappropriate or that it's frowned upon or that it's maybe not a good idea. He says it is unlawful. Whose law? What law? If the Jews of Peter's day were truly the children of Abraham, Jesus says they would do the things of Abraham. They would do the works of Abraham. Abraham chose intentionally to go live amongst foreigners. And he didn't live amongst them but separate from them. He had them in his surroundings. He cooperated with them. He worked with them. He went and rescued Lot with some of them. He was integrated with them. Of course, Abraham wasn't a Jew anyway. He was a Syrian, but they don't want to talk about that. But the bedrock promise that launched Abraham from his home down into Canaan and started what became the nation of Israel, the bedrock promise had this statement in it: in your descendants, in your seed, in your offspring, all the nations of the earth will be blessed. And somewhere between that and Peter's day, it changed from you are to be a blessing to all the nations to it is unlawful for us to associate with anyone who isn't us. That is completely contradictory, and it's also a divisive spirit that belongs to Babylon. Which is why in Jesus' genealogy, he highlighted that his ancestors went down into Babylon, but they never came out. Not in any heart sense. When Jesus was here, they were very much in Babylon, and he called them on it, and they did not like it. And at the end of Revelation, which is all the way we've gone, by the end of Revelation 18, we've gone through all the Christian history up to our present day, and God's call is still, come out of Babylon. You see, we either have Jesus and his Spirit moving into us, changing us from the inside out, and having us join his kingdom, which means his mindset, his way of looking at people, his way of treating the world, his way of being a blessing, his way of being merciful, all of that, eating with tax collectors and sinners, which the Jews couldn't handle either, because Jesus and his kingdom are nothing like this world. So whether you're a Palestinian hating the Israel or Israel hating Palestine, whether you're French hating the English or the English hating the French, whether you're building walls to keep them out, no matter what the barriers are, those barriers are rooted in the idea that somehow me and my is better than you and your, and you need to stay over there and I'm going to stay over here. And it's the spirit of Babylon. And Jesus says, my people went into Babylon, but he never says they came out. And at the end of his book, in Revelation, after Christianity has been born and lived and expanded for hundreds and thousands of years, his call is still the same. Come out of her, my people. And I propose to you, the only way to come out of Babylon is to let go of your pride in your identity of nationality or religion or any of that stuff, and discover the Jesus of the Bible. His character, his heart, his purposes, his mission, his family. And when you discover him, then you're going to have to decide, am I going to hold on to my divisive, arrogant, proud, Babylonian ideas of the world, where Satan's goal is to make me think up more of myself than I ought and less of others? Or am I going to join the kingdom of Jesus, where I'm less for the sake of others? Where my purpose becomes to make life better for other people? Because love awakens love, and when we all love, everybody wins. But when we build bunkers and walls, and we make laws, it is unlawful. You know it's unlawful for me to associate with you. That law didn't come from God. Not the God of the Bible. Not the God of heaven. Not the God who sent his Son. For God so loved the whole world that he sent his only begotten Son, that whosoever believes in him will not perish, but have everlasting life. What a gift heaven sent to us. Let's not throw him away. We'll see you next time.